Hello guys, Josh here. Today I'm working on some clusters. So this cluster came in, it's from a Subaru Crosstrek 2021. It has the basic black and white screen and the base model gauges, and he wants us to upgrade to the high grade cluster. So usually people end up sending in a cluster like this to upgrade to with the color screen and the fancy gauges. I know this glass is really messed up, but this customer chose to go with the red 2019 Sport dial cluster. This one has the red gauges with no carbon fiber texture. This one did have the white needles, but he wants to swap this for red and use the original needles from this cluster. So I already went ahead and did his LED swap. Here's the board with the screen removed. I've got the LED swapped around the motors there, so it all lights up red. Next thing we have to do is take apart the customer's cluster and take the EPROM chip from here, move it over to the new cluster, and then we're going to reprogram it to support the high-grade MFD. We're going to take apart the customer's cluster here, and you have to release a bunch of these little clips here on that hold the shroud on to the top of the cluster. And you have to get all the way around, get all of them. And there's this little cable here that it's not in the way of the top plastic, but we'll remove it afterward. But it's kind of blocking the clip, so you kind of got to get your finger in there. There we go. And then we'll come around the front. Okay, we're going to take this, and what I like to do is, because we want to avoid getting any further dust or anything, I'm just going to immediately put this aside on something so that minimal amount of dust gets in there. Obviously, when you're inside the cluster, you don't want to touch anything because you'll leave fingerprints all over the place, and that looks terrible. On the base model cluster, it's not the end of the world. You can clean all the surfaces on this, but on the high-grade cluster, you never want to touch these dial faces, because if you leave a mark on there, it's never coming off. You can clean some areas of the black, the shiny gloss black, but you can't touch the dials at all. So now we need to remove the pointers. I always do this the same way. So we're removing pointers like this. You can see we have the needles removed and the shafts have stayed inside, so this cluster was being reused for something. The motors are not damaged. These are good. So you got to make sure you take off the needles correctly, because if this shaft comes out, the motor is messed up and you have to take it off the board and rebuild it, or it's going to stutter or stick or shake around or do weird things because it's not aligned, or just replace it. Next, we're going to take the face off, push the clips on the back. The face comes off. So what I like to do again, store it like this so that minimal amounts of dust get in. Okay, now I need to disconnect the connector for the trip reset button. Like that. And we have a cable here. And now we can remove the circuit board like this. Again, I'm going to put the plastics back together. On the low-grade cluster, the EPROM is right here. On the high-grade cluster, you have to remove the screen. It's right here. So first, I'm going to remove the EPROM currently on this cluster, and then we're going to take this one and we're going to put it on this board. Okay, guys, we're going to solder the EPROM over to this breakout so we can make a dump and save the customer's firmware for safekeeping in case something happens to his cluster. There won't be a problem, but before we do any of that, I'm just going to remove the old EPROM from the donor cluster. So to do this, I'm going to start by tinning both sides of the chip with a blob of leaded solder. This will lower the melting point and make it easier to remove the chip, as it's soldered with lead-free from the factory. Okay guys, now to remove the chip, we're going to use 2 soldering irons. It's easier The easiest way to remove the chip, we're going to melt both sides here. And then the chip can be removed. Simple as that. Now, we're going to clean the pads. Now you can see the site is nice and clean. The flux has been cleaned and it's ready to accept the new EPROM. So now we'll put this board aside and we're going to take the customer board here and we're going to repeat the same process. To remove the customer EPROM, so now we have the chip, we have the adapter. We're going to solder the chip to the adapter. Now to make this easier, I'm going to put the breakout into a breadboard. This will make it easier, it won't move around as much as I'm soldering it. So now I can take the EPROM here, we're going to find pin 1, and we're going to solder it to the breakout. It doesn't need to be perfect, we're just doing this in order to read the contents. And now we'll come to the other side. Solder those pins, and now we'll come back to the first side and clean up the soldering here. Okay, now before we try to dump it, we want to verify that it is working correctly on the breakout. So for this process, I have a special cluster that is modified with a breakout EPROM. And you can see I'm running here to some enameled wire on the back, which goes under the screen. So what we can do for this is we're going to unplug the EPROM from this board, and we're going to plug in our customer's EPROM. Like this. Okay? Now, we can power up this cluster and test that the cluster works correctly. Alright? We'll boot up the cluster, and you can see the customer's mileage and information is displayed. So the EPROM is connected correctly to the breakout, so we're going to go ahead and dump the contents. Right, here is our programmer. So we're going to take pin 1 and we're going to insert this into the programmer like that. Now we can read it. Now we always want to make more than one dump, and we're now going to compare the dumps, and you can see that they're identical, which means we have a good dump of this EPROM. Alright, now we are ready to go back and install this on the new cluster. So we're going to remove it from our breakout board. Once again, I'm going to install it in the breadboard just to make this process easier. So we're going to start by adding extra solder onto the pads. And then we're going to take our 2 irons and remove the chip. Just like that. Now we need to install the chip onto this cluster. So we're going to put some solder on these pads. I'm going to give it a clean because there's still flux on it from when we had it on the breakout board. So we're going to clean the chip off here with some isopropyl alcohol so that we can easier see what we are doing, to make sure that it's really attached very well to the board, and also that we're using fresh flux, not any old flux remaining on it. So we're going to carefully clean the chip. I'll flip it over here. Okay, so I can see pin 1 now. So now we're going to line this up here. Okay guys, we're now going to solder the chip. Just a couple of the legs here. Get it as close aligned as we can manage. Now for soldering it onto the actual board, I'm going to use a very high quality aerospace grade Steery flux, because this board is going to vibrate in the car as we drive. So we need to make sure that it has excellent soldering to make sure the chip does not come loose while the customer is driving the vehicle. So now we can just solder the pins. Very easy to do with this wide flat tip. It's a very easy process. Now we will go to the other side and touch up the joints that we soldered first. Okay guys, now we're going to do just a quick flux cleanup and then give it a test, and then I'll do a more thorough cleanup. Okay guys, now you can see the customer's cluster. The new cluster has his mileage, and we have red illumination. I already swapped it because he prefers red needles. So we will be installing the red needles like this onto his combination meter like that. So guys, let me show you the sweep. Okay guys, so now we'll do a quick test here. When we plug in this wire here, the meter powers up, and you can see it is functioning properly. So I'm going to finish cleaning up the flux, and then we will be able to reassemble everything and give everything a test. Okay guys, we have the OBD2 set up here. So we come to the scan tool, select the instrument cluster called odometer here. It will communicate with the cluster. Now, when we read the settings, you can see that we have standard MFD. Okay? So, we are going to update this. Now, when you go to this menu, we are going to do individual item. And now we can change MFD to upper grade MFD. Cluster will restart. Now we read again to verify. Upper grade MFD is selected. So we've now set this to be ready for high grade MFD. Okay guys, we're just testing everything. I still have to clean off with compressed air and all that, but we're just testing the meter, making sure the needles are aligned properly and everything. You can see, it's looking very good.